All right, welcome back to Mayhem Performance Training Toolkit. No idea the video, never usually do. That's okay. It's been a while since we've done one of these. It's Gunkler's fault behind the camera. He kept telling us we can't. I'm joking. We want to get back to the practical application of the things that we're teaching in the podcast. So one of the more recent podcasts that we just sat down and recorded was all about training for strength endurance. Like, what does that mean? How is that different from training for your 1 rep max, and why we think that that's more sport specific, not for all people, but for most people. I'm going to let Brandon intro it a little bit more. He kind of led the conversation in the podcast, and then we're going to show you some examples on the whiteboard of how you can incorporate it into your training.
Yeah, so when we're talking about strength endurance, it's really like 75 to up to close to 100% of your max, being able to do that repeatedly. And you see this all the time in a open workout or in a qualifier that you're doing or in person. And recently we just saw this in age group semifinals with Heavy Isabel, and then the same thing with the Mayhem Classic, where there was the actual Heavy Isabel 30 at 225, 155. It's a little modified for the age groups. But most people are really bad at being able to cycle a heavy barbell or being able to repeat it after a couple of reps. So we're going to give you guys some concepts that you can use here on the whiteboard, 3 different ways that you can build your strength endurance. These are kind of the categories that we use. You want to intro these, or you want me to go ahead and
go for it?
Yeah, so the first one is isolating it. So single modality, meaning if we're just working on the snatch, that's all we're going to focus on. We'll talk about these concepts in a second. That second one is now making it look a little bit more like CrossFit. So it's going to be mixed cyclical work, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Now you're mixing snatches or whatever strength piece that you want to work on with cyclical based movement. This is a good way to slowly start introducing you to extra fatigue, but in like a low mechanical stress way. So we're not adding in a bunch of CrossFit based work or chaos yet. And then that third piece is when we integrate it all the way in. So this is CrossFit, you're doing AMRAPs or for time pieces mixed with true CrossFit movements, and in particular movements that are going to interfere with the actual snatch or interfere with the clean if you're working on strength endurance for the clean. So you want to go ahead and try to intro some of these different styles that we'll use?
Yeah, and I think just to add to what Brandon was saying is typically, and not always, because when we were writing this down, there's always like it depends and all the sort of other scenarios where you might do it differently, but just to keep it broad for now, you would work from single modality towards mixed cyclical towards like an integrated piece. So to start with a single modality, several ways of doing it. That's the fun of program design, right? You have a lot of tools at your disposal, and there's pros and cons for each one, but to just give you some ideas of things you guys can start doing. One thing we like to use a lot is cluster training. Okay, so a cluster, I don't have like a textbook definition of it, but it's hitting a couple reps, resting a few seconds, hitting a couple reps, maybe resting a few more seconds, hitting a couple more reps, and then resting for an extended period of time. That would be like one set. So for example, one thing you could do with a snatch, and let's take Isabel load, let's do like heavy, moderate. Yeah. Isabel RX, not RX plus. If RX plus is 225, Isabel's 135, let's call this Isabel at 185. Average Allen, the avatar we talked a lot about, let's say he can snatch 245, so he would actually be able to do this. He would go 3 touch and go snatch at 185. Rest, you could make this like 15 to 20 seconds of rest. Hit 3 more touch and go snatch at 185. Rest to full recovery. Doesn't always have to be a full recovery, maybe something like 2 to 3 minutes. And then he would hit that for X amount of sets. The sets, what I would typically like to do, Brandon, you can chime in. If this is 6 total reps right here, I'm going to get them up to the volume of Isabel. So I'm going to do 5 total sets. How could you progress this? There's several different ways. You could add volume into the cluster. So if you did 3 by 3, the next week you could do something like 4.4.4, right? Maybe that's a little aggressive. Maybe we went 3.3.3, but that's just a quick example. You could even then go, hey, now I'm going to do 5.5.5 and 4.8.12. So this maybe like 3 sets here, and maybe this is 2 sets here. The example though is just you're doing more reps within the cluster set, right? You could also do it a different way and not progress the reps at all. You could just cut down the rest. And we've talked about that in past videos. We call it capacity work, doing the same amount of work in less overall time. So you could say, hey, I'm gonna hit 3 reps, and week 1, I'm gonna rest 15 seconds, and then week 2, I'm gonna rest 10 seconds, and then week 3, I'm gonna rest 5 seconds in between reps. So you're just getting faster doing it. Same amount of work, less overall time. You could cut the rest after the set. There's several different ways of doing it, but those are a couple ideas around progression. You You want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing to your point is that there's so many variables that you can manipulate and change. So there's always some variance, but you're still focused on the same goal of improving your snatch. So to Jake's point, you could add rest or reduce rest. You could add volume or reduce volume. You could change the total amount of sets that you're doing. You could make them do more touch and go and then do some singles after that. Like one way I love to manipulate this is actually it may go 3 touch and go, dot 3 touch and go for the first week. And then now it's 4 touch and go, dot 1.1.1. So now they're doing 7 total, but they're doing fast singles because that's more realistic to what the sport's going to feel like, where you're having to get back to the barbell quickly. And then I'll give my athletes notes of like, hey, your goal is to get back on the barbell within so many seconds. That allows them kind of like have that kind of time demand that they're going to feel in competition. This next one is, I think, something that Dom used when he was prepping some people for Heavy Isabel for the Mayhem Classic. This is someone that probably has already a big base with their strength endurance, but what he did is 10 snatches for time at the load, but he said it was at 70% effort. Then you'd rest 60 seconds, and now it's 10 snatches at 85% effort. And then rest 60 seconds and 10 snatches now for time. So they're still accumulating 30 total snatches. We're working more on the technical aspect of the lift here. He was telling them, hey, you had to rest like 10 seconds or 15 seconds between reps. And then those last 10, he just said, hey, go ham on this. Try to go as fast as you can. It's another good way to train strength endurance if it's single modality.
Yeah. Want to touch on, I think we're good here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that we could do, but I think honestly, the simplest progression or method where you can branch off and do a bunch of different progressions, I think would be cluster training.
For sure.
I think it's fantastic for strength endurance work. And I'm going to even add in a term just for some people who are like, what do you mean by strength endurance still? I always called it battery training. And we got that from, and I got to give credit where credit's due. I think James Fitzgerald with OPEX came up with that. But I do like that concept. Like I know some people kind of hate on it. It's a made up term, but it just always worked and clicked in my brain where it's like, okay, I have a battery of strength. Like battery being like, how many times can I hit a high percentage, like Brendan said, like 75+% of my 1 rep max, which is going to drain my battery, and then replenish that battery and hit it again. Drain it, replenish it, drain it, replenish it. It just kind of always clicks. So just another way of thinking about it. Jump into the mixed cyclical piece here.
Yeah, so like Jake said, usually we would start with single modality work and then eventually move into mixed cyclical to make it feel more like the sport, and then again, move into integrated. You could flip these, like if you already have a well-trained athlete, you may just see this in your training, like you're already good at snatches, but now we just need to get some respiratory fatigue or get your heart rate up. You could start with this too, so just keep that in mind. A couple quick examples, like one really straightforward one is you're introducing someone into respiratory fatigue or heart rate fatigue as they go into snatches would just be an EMOM. So like minute 1 would be a 15 or 12 cal ski, and you would adjust it based on the athlete. So maybe if someone that's well trained, 15 cal ski at 90% effort, 15 cal ski at close to max effort. If it's someone that's less trained, you may say 15 cal ski with a 45-second cap so they have some rest and you're doing it at an easier pace. Then the even minutes are going to be 3 snatches at 75%. And again, the way that you could adjust this is you keep that 10-minute EMOM, and the next week we do 4 snatches. The next week we do 5 snatches, or we add a little bit more demand on the ski. Maybe it's 18 cals in 3 snatches, then 15 cals in 4 snatches. There's so many ways that you can manipulate this to make sure you're getting the work in.
Could change the modality too, right? Ski has more interference than potentially an echo bike might, right? Or even a rower. Ski probably has the most interference here on any of the machines going into the snatch, because obviously you're taxing your upper body a little bit more than you would the other machines. Brandon, I'd be curious to know, like, when with a games level athlete and they're prepping for a sanctional, when would you use mixed cyclical to prepare them for Isabel? What kind of athlete would you use that for?
Yeah, this is typically the athlete that's already really well developed. Otherwise, I would just spend a lot of time here just so they're really confident with the technique of the snatch. Or if I thought, hey, another workout may have mixed work in it, so they'll just go back and forth between these two, or this is just off-season based work.
Wouldn't you say maybe Guy might be a good candidate for something like this, in the sense that the only thing that's probably limiting Guy is just his heart rate, right? And, like, to keep it simple, in Isabel, he could just keep going, right? Like, it's certainly not his 1 rep max. So this may be a good tool for him, or I don't know if you would.
Yeah, I mean, he's already so good that he doesn't need much of this work.
Yeah, he's probably the worst example for this. I'm trying to think of an example of, like, why would you jump straight to this?
If someone is, like, really limited anytime there's interference, then you'd want to use more of this. But that has to be a high-level athlete. For most of us, you should spend the majority of your time training in the off-season, or if you're prepping for a competition, in the single modality. And then let's say 6 weeks out or 8 weeks out, that's when you start integrating either mixed cyclical or like the true CrossFit-based work. So just keep that in mind. Another example is every 4 minutes for, let's say, 5 sets. You do 10 shuttle runs, so now there's some lower body fatigue going into a squat snatch, and then AMRAP snatch until the 2-minute mark. And then you'd rest the 2 minutes and repeat that over and over again for the 5 sets. For an athlete that maybe needs just a little bit more consistency, I'll tell them like, hey, your goal is you got to hit 5 snatches, but you need to make sure you hit 5 every single set. For an athlete that maybe you're just trying to really bring some intensity, I'll tell them to just like go ham from the beginning and see if they can maintain it. So there's, again, a lot of ways you can manipulate
I like increasing effort on those, like get faster every set. So for those who, do come out too hot, like just be like, show me that you can control your pace. And by this point, like Brandon is saying, we're assuming we've had an off season or some time with you where we've done pace work, and now it's like, this is the application of that. Like go get faster as you go. Cool.
One last thing that just with both of these, or even with the integrated work that I also will do with athletes, if we know we're training for a specific test or we want them to get good at something like heavy Isabel, I may also tell them, hey, the first 3 snatches of every single one must be power. And then you can move to a squat snatch. But again, that's kind of like high level. If you already have someone that can do that weight, most people at that load are gonna have to squat snatch.
Yeah, if you're following Compete right now, by the way, we're doing a lot of this in preparation for the Community Cup. And we're actually cycling through for Compete because we're programming for a broad audience. Like Jake Lockard and I talked, like how do we want to structure this? We're actually kind of rotating through all of these. So if you guys look at your Fridays and Saturdays on Compete, you'll see this rotation in there because we want to hit people who need work on single modality, mixed, cyclical, integrated, so on and so forth. So let's jump into the last one, integrated work.
Yeah, so when we say integrated, we just mean mixed, true CrossFit, some chaos in there. Maybe we change these movements every single week. One simple example, 5-minute AMRAP, they do 20 toe to bar, 15 bar facing burpees, and then AMRAP snatch. You can, again, adjust the percentage, or if you already know you're doing a competition with a certain load, it's 185, 125, 135, 95, you could put that load or even overload it. Maybe I'll have someone that the loading at the competition says 135, I'll have that athlete do 145 one week, then 155, and then they'll drop back down for more speed and intensity at 135. Another way, if you want to overload the other movements, because now we're getting into the sport, just doing this one time, you're only getting 20 toe to bar, 15 bar facing burpees. You're really not getting much. That's just like causing some interference. We could do a 3-minute AMRAP times 5 sets, and maybe it goes to 15 toe to bar, 12 bar facing burpees, then AMRAP snatch. So there'll be less snatch in that integrated work, but now we're really mixing it with all the other stuff that they're gonna feel in a CrossFit environment. And now we're practicing on toe to bar facing burpees, or whatever movement you put in there.
Can I go a little CrossFit level 1 on this? Like if you are at home and you're programming a little bit for yourself, designing your own training, and you're thinking about, okay, like I see what you guys are doing. I want to do a lot of integrated work. I want to get ready for the Community Cup or online semifinals. How do you even begin to plan this? Like I always say, like I like to plan the chaos. So even the CrossFit, I'm a big planner, organized guy. So it's like some of our coaches will just be able to do it off the top of their head. I still have a structure, and the reason I have a structure is because I want to be able to hit a lot of different things. So one way that I do it is, and I won't go too long on this, but let's say that this is always a weightlifting, right? So we're gonna have the weightlifting fix. I'm gonna go CrossFit level 1 here, like MGW, monostructural gymnastics weightlifting. I'll do something like where week 1, I'm gonna go MW. Week 2, I'll go GW. Week 3, I'll go MGW, right? And I could just rotate through that 2 times. That's 6 total weeks in preparation for a competition. Just like a little simple way of like going, where do I even begin with integrated work or sport-specific work? How do I even choose what modalities go in here? That's just like a really broad structure I like to follow. And again, that's just straight out of like the level 1 handbook. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great way, especially like if you want like true variance, hopper style, where you're just getting a ton of touches on certain movements. One thing I'll note here is that if you're an athlete or you're a coach and you have athletes that you already know movements that are struggle, like that any time that they do bar facing burpees with snatches, their snatches struggle, then you'd want to integrate that more often. But you could change the bar facing burpee to a lateral burpee, to a burpee to a 12-inch touch, to a burpee box jump over. There's all kinds of ways you could still manipulate it to have some variance there. Or again, if you know that there's specific movements in a competition, like if we knew it was these 3 movements, I'd probably do more of these. But to Jake's point, having some variance matters.
This is when you don't know what's coming, right? Like if we know what's coming, we're gonna train what's coming. Keep it really simple with that too. So
I do think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one last thing, just if you did know what was coming, and this is more for the coaches out there, but athletes, if you're prepping for a competition yourself and trying to write some of the peak training, you don't want to just hammer the same movements for 6 straight weeks and then go in overtrain. So let's just say it was these 3 movements: toe to bar, bar facing burpee, and snatch in a workout. I want to do those patterns, but I still may adjust it. Like instead of bar facing burpees, they may do a dumbbell bench press, something as silly as that, or a ring dip. So they're still getting some pec fatigue. They're closing their shoulders off, so it's making the snatch harder. But I'm not always doing burpees because I may want to put them in another workout as well throughout the week. And the same thing with toe to bar. You could add GHD. You could do some kind of pike leg raise. You could do ab mat sit-ups. So there's other things you could do where I'm still working on that flexion pattern, but I'm not always doing toe to bar with 100 reps in a workout every single week.
Yeah, train the pattern, not the movement week to week when you know it ahead of time. Anything else you wanted to touch on here?
I think that's it. Ask questions, post down below. We're happy to answer those and give you more examples.
We'll give Brandon's email this time. No, I'm just kidding. As always, Jake Foster, mayhemnation.com. When you have questions on this, because I know you will, because I still would, right? I'd be looking at this going, okay, but what about this? And what about this? And what about that? Send them over. I'll answer them as fast as I can. But it's been a lot of fun doing this when you guys send your questions in. So thanks for joining.